Good morning and welcome to the second event in the Australian College of Applied Psychology's inaugural Get Equipped series. I'm Catherine Fox, I'm your MC for this morning. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we're all meeting on and paying my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Now, this is the second in a series of 4 events that the college has been putting on with the aim of giving tools and information to people during this very stressful period that we've all had to help us with our own mental health, but also give us the chance to support those around us, which I think, of course, is something we could all do with. Now, this is a slightly different event to our first last week because this is all online. Of course, we're all very familiar with Zoom these days and other formats, so I was just thinking the other day, that mute button would be really handy in real life, wouldn't it? But anyway, I digress. But it's lovely to have our 2 wonderful speakers with us today, respectively from Brisbane and Melbourne, so and you're all online as well, of course. The format's fairly straightforward. Both of our speakers will present for about 20 minutes. When they've both presented, we'll then take questions. So please feel free to come up with those questions as they're speaking and send them through to us on the chat function. So we will then curate and read out those questions, and then we'll just have a little chat at the end and a wrap up. So without more ado, let me hand over to our first speaker today, Margaret Ann Carter, who is the college's Chair of Discipline Counselling, coming to us from Brisbane today. She'll be chatting to us about the importance of being your authentic self and what that actually means. And I think that would be really useful, Margaret, because gosh, we hear a lot about authenticity these days. And I sometimes think it's a little confusing. So it'll be very interesting to hear from you. And she'll also speak about the many faces that we wear in the different contexts of our lives. So without more ado, let me hand over to Margaret.
Apologies for the background. We're moving here on the Brisbane campus in ACAP. I'm in my office and most of my books and everything are packed, ready to go to a different location here within our building. What we've learnt from our experience in 2020 with the pandemic is that our workplaces require more flexibility on the part of employees and employers, requiring us to be constantly learning and adapting quickly to the present world constant, which for us is change. We, that's individuals, groups and organisations, have increased accountability and authority to carry out our roles, and we also have the task of self-empowerment. We're eager to co-design, co-create, to arrive at solutions jointly to challenges and innovations, to have buy-in to what we have developed. Our conundrum here is that we often do not know what we do not know. We do not always know what kind of help to seek in diagnosing and fixing challenges and identifying what to improve and how to innovate. This is where the authentic self comes in. And today I'm going to talk about authentic consultancy. But as I'm talking, you can actually translate this concept to authentic parenting, authentic reporting, authentic leadership, authentic teachers. So let's look at authentic consultancy. And this is about assisting others improve their lot long term. And this actually means supporting them perceive, understand and act upon the process events that occur in their environment. That's the starting point. And from that point, working with them to bring about their definition of long-term improvement. Authentic means genuine, trustworthy and reliable. And in good Australian terms, it also means true blue, a person of trust and helpfulness. This trueness of authenticity is having integrity at the first point of contact. The power the consultant has is one of influence, working side by side with others. This power of influence comes from the genuine ability to really listen to what others want and really want. Every conversation, therefore, is a learning experience. When another person shares information with us, we always know it's for a purpose. And the basic question we ask ourselves is, you shared this information with me, so what do you want? The first part of this journey takes us on a search for the presenting question, moving to the real question. The burrowing process moves us along in communication. What do you want? To what do you really want? The really want is where the real energy is to make the difference. Genuinely listening to someone is one of the most powerful acts one human being can do with another. By genuinely listening to another person, we open ourselves up to be influenced by that person. Opening ourselves up by listening enables us to be influential with that person. You see, consultancy is an interventionist process. Once we choose to genuinely listen to another person, we are already intervening in their lives. When we build influencing relationships with others, we are supporting them to make meaning in their ever-changing environment within which they work. Relationships are cornerstones here. They're the vehicle through which meaning and purpose come to life. Relationship, be it whether we're a parent, a teacher, a consultant, a reporter, even a prime minister. Relationship is a means to an end, and it's also a working alliance. Respect and empathy are two values that orientate authenticity. Empathy is relationship oriented. It involves an understanding of thinking and feeling of another person and how that person's context influences their thinking, their feeling, their acting. The authentic person intentionally positions themselves side by side with others as they creatively plan together, selectively deciding on implementations and celebrating together the outcome of joint ventures. Taking responsibility for the management of the change process, authentic people use strength appreciation techniques to understand others better, to build influencing relationships within which achievements are made and the capacity for building greater achievements are enhanced. One example of such a technique are the 5 questions of empowerment. The first question is, what do you want? The second, are you going to get it? What's working and what's not working? The third, what do you know or need to know to get what you want? The fourth, what do you believe about what you want? And does what you believe help you get what you want? And the fifth is what you want and what you are doing needs satisfying for you. These questions of empowerment can be used in sequence or in varying orders. Their purpose is to assist us come to grips with what we want and to be empowered to achieve what our desired outcomes are. The first question focuses on vision and the purpose and helps us understand, what do you want? What do you really want? The second question highlights what we've already been doing. Is it been working or not working? The third checks out our level of thinking and what do we know and what do we need to know. The fourth leads us to our belief system. What are our values? What are our principles? The fifth question delves into our satisfaction. And satisfaction is a product of expectation. So this question naturally closes the loop and leads us back to, what do you want? Through this process, we experience a sense of being valued and valuable. We connect meaning with our behavior. The theme song for authenticity is that of Evita. I'll be good for you and you'll be good for me. I'll be very good for you and you'll be very good for me. To support others grow and develop, we need to wear the faces. The face is a multifaceted one. It displays separate images depending on how you look at it, and yet an interconnected face with all images becoming one. The human face is made up of the same elements: cheeks, mouth, nose, ears, eyes, etc. And yet, when all those elements come together, they do so in a unique way, making a face which distinctly belongs to that person alone. Now, this is the same with the face we wear as a consultant, as a parent, as a reporter, as a leader, as a teacher, as an investigator, a student, even as the Prime Minister. Each face has different performance roles, but the concept is the same. The face of the authentic consultant is the face of the change leader, authentic consultant, engaging professional, astute manager, and careful monitor. The consultant's face is a blend of each performance role, with each face contributing their own special combination of authenticity and professionalism. Just what the blend is something for us to discover. How the faces come together is part of us being authentically helpful. Just going to burrow a little bit under the surface and give you some understanding of what each of these performance roles mean. So think about it in your professional role today and see if you can translate this to what you do in your role. So authenticity for a consultant, one of the faces that we wear is a change leader. As a change leader, the consultant is purposeful in bringing about change in another person's world. The relationship is one of change. Individuals, groups, organisations contact this person since they're seeking change. Wearing this face, the consultant is a purposeful paradigm shifter. You think about it in the pandemic. For many of us, a change leader, you might be wearing that face when you're working with your teams and you're actually transitioning to flexible working arrangements, working off-site, working from home. How do we get that happening? Now, one of your faces is a change leader, but another face is the authentic consultant, and it's about right and effective processes. So when we're looking at flexible working arrangements, what are the processes? Who's responsible for what? And what's our end game? So when you wear this face, we need to prioritise right position, right process, and right relationship. We need to get the job done, but how we get it done matters. It's about being respectful, courteous, compassionate. It's about having parameters, what's negotiable, what's not negotiable. And perhaps in terms of the shift in flexible working arrangements, an authentic consultant might be engaging in how do we maintain a sense of engagement and connectedness when we're actually not in the same physical space, but we're around the nation and we're connecting via Zoom with different people at different times for different purposes. The third face is the engaging professional. An engaging professional actively strives to get results that makes things one step better. So when you're wearing this face, you need to be knowledgeable so that you can be influential and you can translate action. So when we think about change leader, moving our teams off-site and flexible working arrangements, the authenticity of meaningful engagement when we are working off-site, the engaging professional face you might be challenged with, well, we're working in this digital age. We've got novices and we've got people who are incredibly established in terms of how to work in this digital age. So how do we work together and build everybody's knowledge so that people are successful? We set everybody up for success. So as an engaging professional, it's having the conversations with the different players and understanding, what do you know? What do you need to know? And this is where those 5 questions of empowerment come and make some sense. Now, the fourth face that you might wear in your conversations is being a manager. And when you wear this face, you're actually managing the process. So individuals or groups or even an organisation has come to you for assistance in terms of we're moving an entire team nationally or statewide or locally to flexible working arrangements. We want to make sure people are connected, they're purposeful, that we're getting quality work happening. And we want to make sure that everybody's skilled in terms of the tools that we're using. But most importantly, we want to make sure that everybody's mental health and well-being is cared for. So when we make contact, we're going to make a contract to get this happening. We're going to do a number of things so that we can achieve our desired outcome. So when you wear the astute manager face, you actually are a collaborative planner. You're working with, W-I-T-H. You're focusing on values of respect and empathy, and you're very principle-centred. So you'll have people at different stages of their journey. How do we recognise and respect that? And we work with them as they move forward. Now, the fifth face, and you might be wearing these faces, a couple of them at the same time, or just it might be the main face as you're engaging in a conversation with one person, but you've got a different face when you're engaging in a conversation with others, or you've got a combination. But the fifth face is the careful monitor. And as an authentic individual, we can't just set something up, close our eyes and say, well, she'll be right. We actually need to monitor. We need to keep a cautious eye on the process because results matter. But as I've said, the authentic person really concentrates on making sure it's purposeful and we do it in a respectful, professional way. We work side by side and we concentrate on value-adding results. So overall, our brief may be we want to have quality teams working off-site, great sense of mental health and well-being, sense of empowerment, contribution to the group, a sense of connectedness, vibrancy, and a sense of purpose in terms of embracing the digital age and the tools that we've adopted within our workplace. So it's important to appreciate the authentic consultant only has credibility to work with. They need to be willing to grow, to risk, to care, and to become involved. This means knowing what to do and when to do it. They need to understand the person from another person's vantage point. And that's the same for parents, for teachers, for anybody engaging in a relationship with somebody else. It's about understanding the other person's viewpoint. Remember, the consultant does not have power over others. Rather, wearing these faces and using techniques such as the 5 questions of empowerment enable them to influence others, to choose different paths and gain more effectiveness over what others want and what they really want. Wearing these different faces enables consultants to communicate effectively. First, understanding each other and leaving responsibility for challenges and innovations where they belong. My invitation to you as you consolidate and celebrate your authentic self is to see authenticity in action, to name where it's happening in your own backyard, and to take up the mantle and walk in the footsteps of being an authentic individual and an authentic consultant. Thank you for listening for this part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you so much, Margaret. That was absolutely fascinating. And also thank you for your very smooth reboot. I think if there's one thing we've learnt over the last year, it's to be tolerant of the occasional technical hitch, but it was fascinating. Thank you so much. And I think you just, a real penny drop for me around this idea of being genuine, but behaving in different ways and having those different faces at different times according to context. So we'll certainly have some more questions and discussion. But for the moment, let me now introduce the college's Kaz Mitchell, who's a lecturer in the discipline of counselling based in Victoria. And she's going to give us some insights around neuroscience and something called the window of tolerance, which, given the way the world is at the moment, sounds like a very good idea. But thank you, Kaz, over to you.
Thanks very much, and thanks to Margaret for her talk about being a genuine listener and a genuine helper. And I guess I'm going to take a slightly different look at authenticity and to look at what is the frame of mind that will help us be genuine listeners, genuine helpers, and of course, yeah, looking a little bit at the neuroscience of how our minds work. If I can have the next slide, please, that would be terrific. So how do we prepare ourselves to be authentic? Well, you know, the fact of the matter is that the true self is not static. It's fluid, and it can actually morph into several different parts of ourselves, and it can do that in quite rapid succession, depending on who we're talking to, who we're involved in conversation with, what's happening around about us. And usually these parts come with pretty strong emotional reactions, or they can come with very strong emotional reactions that influence how we react to what's happening around us. So I want you to try a little thought experiment here, and if you'll go with me on this one and really try to immerse yourself, hopefully you'll get a real sense and a real feel for what I'm talking about here. So I want you to bring to mind someone in your life that you care about and respect, but who also has certain behaviors that you find really deeply irritating. Okay, now I'm sure we can all think of someone, and especially those of us who've been living in close quarters with people over COVID. Bring them to mind, close your eyes, and really picture them and imagine them doing this irritating thing that drives you nuts. And as you do that, notice what you feel in your body. So that might be tension, or, you know, what you're feeling in your gut, your heart rate, your body temperature, all of those kind of things. Just really focus on what's happening in your body. And as you notice these sensations, notice if there's an emotion that's emerging. You know, are you starting to feel a little bit irritated? Maybe even angry or upset, or, you know, what is the emotion that comes with it? And what are the thoughts that are coming to mind? What are you telling yourself about this person and about your relationship to this person? And finally, what do you feel like doing right now with all of these emotions churning around and all these thoughts? What do you feel like doing? And now I want you to switch this around and bring to mind the things that you admire about this person, the things you love about them, and do the same process. What do you feel in your body? What emotion emerges? What thoughts are you having? And what do you want to do? Now, hopefully, even just in that short amount of time, you've been able to recognize the state of mind that we can create just by where we turn our focus. Most people, when they do this, feel much lighter in the second part of that little thought experiment. They feel more compassionate towards this person, and they feel calmer in themselves. Some people actually say, no, that didn't work that way for me. I actually just got really mad, which just might indicate that there is some unfinished business that you might need to deal with in this relationship. But for most people, if you choose the right person that you've just got that nice balanced kind of attitude towards, they frustrate you, but you love them. Most people feel much better when they think about the things that they love about this person. So the question to ask here is, which self is the real authentic self as you experience these two frames of mind? Is it the irritated part, or is it the compassionate part? And can they both be authentic? Maybe a better question to ask here is, which of these selves best suits your goal or your intentions in this relationship? Is it to create distance, or is it to create collaboration, connection, and helpfulness? And that might help you direct your focus of attention, how you want to think about this person. So if I can have the next slide, please, I'm going to try and explain what happens in our mind through the use of some simple neuroscience. Some of you may have come across the term neurons that fire together, wire together. So basically our brains are full of billions of neurons, and these get connected into networks of associations. And this is pretty much how we spend our days. We're in and out of various different networks depending on the task at hand or the thoughts that we're having. To give you an example of how a neural network is formed, for those of you who are musicians, you'll understand this. I play guitar. I taught myself to play guitar when I was about 15. And when I first started to play it, gosh, it was difficult, and I almost gave up pretty much straight away, because trying to make your fingers into these really weird contorted shapes, do it quickly so that it sounds nice, and hold the pressure down on the strings, it's really hard work. And it wasn't until after hours and hours and hours and weeks and months of practice that it actually began to sound a little bit decent. But more importantly, that my fingers actually just learned really quickly where to place themselves on the fretboard, and without even thinking. Someone could call out to me, play a G, Kaz, and my fingers would automatically know where to go. So this is the benefit of having these neural networks. It's an intelligent design because it means that every time you learn something new, after repeating it a few times, you have this really well-established network that helps you think, move, and act without much effort. The same goes for our thoughts. We have networks of thoughts, and if we get caught ruminating, then that network becomes stronger and stronger the more we ruminate. So if we continue to think about the irritating behaviors of this person that we have in mind, and if we only focus on the things that irritate us, that network gets stronger and stronger, and we almost lose sight of the things that we appreciate about them. So sometimes we just need to remind ourselves to focus on the good things, so that we can strengthen that network. So another way to think about the network, if I say to you the word dog, I'm sure there are some images that will come to your mind. You might have a particular dog that comes to mind. And in the same way we did the other exercise, you're going to have some felt sensations around thinking about this dog in particular. You're going to have emotions, you're going to have feelings, and you're going to want to act. And this network of associations that you have towards dogs is going to be based on your past experience of dogs. So if you had a pet dog growing up and it was cuddly and cute and lovable, then you're probably going to have lots of feelings of, being cute and cuddly and wanting to go and rush home and hug your dog, or hug a stranger's dog when you leave the building. But others, like myself, I was bitten by a dog when I was 10. So my neural network around dogs is going to be a little bit different to yours. And for many years, I was actually scared of dogs. I grew up in the country, and I was walking past a farm, and a farm dog ran out. I was with a group of friends, and it just ran up to me and bit me in the leg. So anytime a dog used to run at me, I used to freeze. Because my brain had predicted that this dog was going to bite me. I managed to change those neural networks over time, just simply by having friends who had dogs who didn't bite me. And over time, my nervous system and my brain it basically updated the information and gave me the message that actually most dogs don't bite you. Most dogs are quite friendly. Because this is the thing about our brain. One of its major tasks is to predict what's going to happen next, to prepare us for action. And that includes trying to predict what other people are going to do. And as good as this mechanism can be, the brain's desire to predict what's going to happen next is not always accurate, and particularly when we're feeling stressed. And this is kind of how this can work. So I can look at you, for instance, and perhaps you remind me of someone from my past that I had a major conflict with. And it just might be just something about the way you dress or look, or the tone of your voice, or any number of things that might trigger something in me, some old memory in me. And that is likely to make me feel flustered, or it is likely to make me freeze if that feeling is strong enough. Because I've just predicted that you are a threat, and my nervous system has been alarmed. And this is really important to know, because if we're going to be authentic listeners, authentic helpers, we need to feel safe, but also we need to make the other person feel safe as well, because people respond best when they're feeling safe. And if you can bring up the next slide for me, I'm now going to talk about the idea of the window of tolerance, which comes from Daniel Siegel's work. And so the fact of the matter is, we all do get cranky sometimes, and we behave in ways and we say things that we later regret. And certainly the past year has taught us how uncertainty, lack of control, and a fear for the future can make us behave in ways that are perhaps not in keeping with our best self, the side of ourselves that we want to project. Look, it's put a lot of strain on all of us and on our relationships, and it has made us feel threatened, and it's made our nervous systems a little bit jittery. So the window of tolerance, this refers to this place of calm. When we're in our window of tolerance, we're able to stay present to what's going on around us and within us. And it helps us to make more accurate predictions about what's going to happen next and about how people are going to act towards us. However, when we're out of our window of tolerance, we go into either a state of chaos where we feel extremely anxious, or we go into a case of rigidity where we're trying to control everything and everyone around us to try and keep us out of chaos. And the state of chaos is essentially anxiety, and the state of rigidity, it can lead to a very frozen state, which can also lead to depression. And when we're in either of those states, if we're in chaos or we're in rigidity, it's almost impossible to be mindfully present and to be able to think in a mindful way. So what I'm proposing is that rather than searching for this idea of what is the authentic self, because, well, isn't being chaotic being authentic when you're in that chaotic state? Isn't that being real and genuine? When we're frozen, is that not an authentic state? But rather, let's think and imagine a mindful self. And if I can have the next slide, please. So here's some tips for mindful practice. And I'm not talking about formal meditation here. I'm just talking about day-to-day mindfulness. And there are these 3 points that are really important, and that's focused attention, open awareness, and kind intention. So focus of attention refers to our ability to choose our focus of attention, to notice when our mind wanders away from our focus of attention, and to bring it back to what we want, what we're trying to attend to. So for instance, while you're eating breakfast, attend to eating breakfast. Savor the taste of breakfast. Don't be worrying about what's sitting on your desk at work. And when you notice yourself wander, bring it back to just simply eating your breakfast. So that's the focus of attention. And of course, we looked at that earlier with that little thought experiment. You know, where is my focus attention going to be? Is it going to be on the things that irritate me, or is it going to be on the things that I value about this person? And the thing about this mindfulness, learning to be mindfully present in the moment, is the more that you do it, the more you are able to recognize when your mind has wandered, rather than spending hours and hours and hours and looking at your day and thinking, where was I? Where am I? You know, where did I just go? So being mindfully aware, we can bring us back to what our attention is and needs to be. Open awareness, and again, this is part of that little exercise I gave you earlier, being openly aware of what's happening in your body, what's happening to your nervous system. Are you starting to feel yourself go into a chaotic, anxious state? Are you feeling yourself drop into a really frozen, rigid, needing to control state? And how can you stay in your window of tolerance? So noticing what's happening in our nervous system, but also being aware of how we are affecting other people. You know, is there something about what we're doing or saying making people anxious, or sometimes worse, frozen? Are they unable to say anything because they feel quite threatened by us? Because the thing about nervous systems, they also talk to each other, so we can co-regulate, we can create calm. If we're calm, other people are more likely to be calm. If we're anxious, other people are more likely to be anxious. So we can co-regulate or we can dysregulate. And offering the gift of calm, I think, is often the best thing that we can do for the world. And finally, our kind intentions. So, and again, the little exercise earlier would have helped you, hopefully, if it worked for you, would have helped you recognize that when you shift your focus away from what irritates you to what you value about this person, then it helps soothe our own nervous system. And when our nervous system is soothed, then the other person's is more likely to follow us. And then that way all parties stay in their window of tolerance, and we can be much more collaborative and have much better connections when we're feeling calm. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that that we need to have self-care. We need to look after ourselves first and foremost. And you know, I listened to the talk from last week, and I know one of the speakers mentioned this as well, that this is not rocket science. It may be neuroscience, but it's not rocket science. Just reflect on what's happening in the moment, learn to be more mindful, get plenty of exercise, healthy diet, sleep. I know it's boring, but all those things, they really do help. And also being in nature. All of these things help us to stay in our window of tolerance. And when we practice these simple things, it leaves us more able to be less reactive to the circumstances that are out of control, which, you know, includes COVID-19, but also, you know, climate change and the potential end of democracy as we know it, and other existential threats that we're faced with. And it also feels us more able to engage with colleagues, with friends, with family, and even strangers with more compassion, connection and collaboration, not to mention strange dogs. And we've also got to be very careful about the stories that we tell ourselves about what's happening in the world, because remember that those stories will lay down neural networks. And we really want to be establishing helpful networks. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we hide from reality. That's not what I'm saying at all. We do need to be realistic, but we do need to include in our stories a balanced view that includes hope and exciting possibilities for the future. Because what you fill your head with and what you turn your focus of attention to dictates how you feel and how you behave. And finally, also just to add that this idea of kind intentions, the first person that we have to have kind intentions towards, guess who that is? That's ourselves. And so being compassionate towards ourselves is a really, really good place to start. And that kind of ends my little talk. And I think we're going to be open for questions now.
Thank you so much, Kaz. That was fantastic. I must admit, when you were talking about chaos and rigidity, it brought back the 23 years I spent in the newsroom of a national newspaper, where I think I ricocheted between both. But also so many practical insights there that I think will resonate with everybody. Look, I'm going to kick off with a question, then I'll open up and we'll read out some of the ones that have come in. What I did notice from both of your presentations, as a fairly practical person, I loved Margaret's points about active listening and the questions and so on, and the different faces, and your points, Kaz, about what we can do about that window of tolerance, particularly in the hurly-burly of our workplaces. And I just wondered, it's the same question to both of you. It all makes eminent sense. You've explained it beautifully, and the impact that it can have on yourself and those around you. I suspect many of us just get swept up in the day's events. And I just wondered, any tips or insights from both of you? How do we keep these things in mind and practice them on a really regular basis when we're so stressed?
Shall I go first? Well, you know, the mindfulness part, it's a little bit like going to the gym. You know, if you want to get fit, you've got to go regularly. And the mindfulness is the same thing. You just need to sort of start and start in little small ways. You know, as I said, maybe you might set a task for yourself that every morning I'm going to just eat my breakfast, and that's all I'm going to focus on. And then there might be another part in the day when you do the same. And various points of the day, just set those times aside and then keep adding to it, so that after a while, you know, you can pretty much stay in your window of tolerance most of the time, not all of the time. I'll confess that at the beginning of this talk, before we sort of went on air, there was a little bit of some technical difficulties around the PowerPoints, and I could feel myself getting quite chaotic.
And Margaret, any thoughts from you on some of those points, very good points, of course, that you were making about listening actively and also influencing?
Look, I think adding on from what Kaz is saying, complementing it, to me it's about intentionality, and it really is about that intentionality to be in relationship with somebody else. And the greatest gift you do give somebody is to be present in the moment. And there could be chaos happening around. So it's the fact that you're able to ground yourself. And it might be some of those tips about the mindful self, to be able to ground yourself, that you can be clear in the head, to understand. You know, the big thing Stephen Covey talks to us about is you need to understand the other person's perspective before being understood. And so I think it is training yourself, and that's where your neural networks come in, and this is about the habits that you develop, to listen first to understand and then to be understood. And for that to happen, you actually have to have a relationship based on trust, and to have a relationship based on trust, you've got to be a trustworthy person. And that really, you know, I guess that closes the loop. So it is intentional, it's purposeful, and it is respecting and honouring the people or the person that you're present in the moment with, so that you can genuinely give them that gift. And I think, as Kaz said, your sense of calm, groundedness, that's what you can control. You're not able to control the other person's responses, but it does bring a sense of quiet amidst the chaos that we're often trying to survive, let alone thrive in.
Yeah, great point. I think, again, maybe my journalistic training, but your points, Margaret, about what is somebody really asking? What are they really saying is something that we often ask ourselves when we're doing our jobs, because that's what we're kind of trained to do. But it is about being conscious about those processes. Now, I know we do have a question, so I might get that one read out for us. Thank you.
Does the practice of authenticity and being present in the moment get easier with age?
Good question. I I don't think it necessarily has to. I think you have to have worked for it. It probably does get a little bit easier for everyone, but I still think that the more you work at it, the more you practice it. Again, it's like going to the gym. You know, if I went to the gym every day as I get older, I would be fitter than those people who haven't been to the gym. I certainly think that you don't care so much what other people think as you get older, so that helps. You don't feel like you have to be liked by everyone. That helps.
I think yeah. Oh, sorry, Catherine.
No, I was only going to say we often talk about people getting more set in their ways as they get older, which I also, of course, resist. But it is interesting, isn't it, that in a way experience should make us perhaps have that window of tolerance. On the other hand, we also hear that stereotype about age. But sorry, go ahead, Margaret.
I was thinking, I think it's more about experience and intentionality, because there's a phrase that you're probably all used to. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So if you want to actually get something different, you've actually got to do differently. So I think it is about being purposeful and being intentional. And, you know, we talk about the concept of the first impulse, and our impulse might be a habit of flight rather than actually being calm, being centered, being grounded, ready to listen, to understand. So I think it is about developing habits, and it does take practice. And this might be something that we develop with somebody who's 6 and 7 years old and someone who's 96, 97. And I have worked with a lot of people at end of life in terms of that intentionality. So I think it's more experience, and I think it's more purpose and the motivation to be present in the moment, to genuinely listen to their story rather than hurry, 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 hurry. I'm going to give across what I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got about public speaking was how to use a pause. Just allow some time. And I think that's something we can apply in a whole lot of forums. We do have one more question that's come in.
I've tried to adopt mindfulness into my routine so many times, and I find it really hard as a founder of a business, working with tight deadlines, and I'm very much always on. So what advice would you have for someone who struggles with mindfulness but knows how beneficial it can be?
Yeah, look, I mean, again, I think just persisting and finding different ways. You know, there are lots of different ways to practice mindfulness, and there's certainly lots online now. You can, you know, just Google mindfulness, and there's so many different tools to help to do that. But yeah, look, it can be difficult. It's not easy. It's like the guitar playing I was telling you about first. So many times I could have given it up because this is just too difficult. And you really do just have to persist and keep trying to find the right modality that works for you. You'll come across it and it'll just work for you, hopefully. Yeah.
Sometimes I think too, you know, it's intentionally scheduling that you've got 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 2 minutes, so that, but you've also got to be able to do it in the moment, which is, I think, what you're saying. So, you know it cognitively, but you're not actually being able to translate it when you need it in the moment. And that comes back to the first impulse. So you've got to be able to also listen to your body. And what are the signals that are saying, I'm going from calm land here to irritation, to anxiety, to frustration, to, you know, we go up all of these different levels. And for us to engage in behaviour change, we've got to be able to know the signals in our body that's saying, hey, you're moving out of the calm zone and you're starting to escalate. Now, we do a magnificent job as parents, as teachers, teaching this to young people, but we don't necessarily apply it to ourselves as grown-ups. But if you can recognise the signals in your body when you're starting to escalate your emotions, and you're able to code switch and put the brake on and go into what Kaz was talking about, some of those mindful, might be a minute or two, and you'll work out which ones are going to work for you to be able to ground you. Whether it's taking a couple of breaths, whether, you know, it's the clenching, whether it's moving away and then actually transporting yourself for 1 minute. So my recommendation is start to notice your signals. And if you know your signals already, nip them in the bud early, because if we don't nip them in the bud early, they're going to escalate really quickly. And then we're dealing with a very different issue.
Yeah, and can I add to that? Yeah, because it's again, it's the gym analogy. If you don't go to the gym every day, you don't build up those muscles. So the day that you need to lift something really heavy, if you haven't been going to the gym, you're unable to lift the heavy boxes when you're moving office. And also the way that I learned mindfulness was again through music. And again, as a teenager, I had never heard of mindfulness, didn't know anything about meditation, but I loved to listen to music. And I would sit down with this great intention that I was going to really focus only on the music, and I'd get really irritated because my mind would wander. And I just learned to notice, oh, my mind's wandering, bring it back to listening to the music. And then I'd listen to the music and my mind would wander again, because it does. And that's, I think, where I learned how to be mindfully present. So it's just through those really boring exercises that if you just do regularly, you just build those brain connections and then it does become a little bit more habitual, so that you can, that being in the window of tolerance doesn't mean to say you never feel stress. It just means you never get thrown completely out into chaos or rigidity.
And I think that's a great point. Well, both of you have given us great pointers. It's sort of circuit breaking habits, isn't it? Mental habits. And Kaz, particularly when you were talking about people who irritate you, and that triggers that sequence, and I think recognising that and circuit breaking that can be really helpful. I did just want to... Yep, sorry, Margaret. Go on.
And I was just going to say, part of it is practicing it when you're not in the moment. So you're exactly right. So you kind of recognise what's going to send you in this spiral. And if you know it's certain things or certain situations or certain mannerisms, etc., having some strategies that you know beforehand and practice it. So when you're in the heat of the moment, you're able to actually circuit break.
Yes, that's an incredibly important point. And again, where that idea of almost looking at it like going to the gym, so the routine that you keep repeating. Just to sort of wrap up today, I did want to ask you, do you think the past year, with all its stresses, our reliance on online and so on, has accentuated or in fact helped in some of the issues we've been discussing today? I'd just be interested in your thoughts, because it seems to me that in a funny way our tolerance levels, and I wasn't just being flippant, in some ways have increased because we've all been in the same very difficult situation, trying to get by, trying to get through our day, reliant on technology. So just wondered what your thoughts are about that in terms of active listening and so on, but also our window of tolerance. So maybe, Margaret, we can start with you.
I think in many ways, when I look around me, I look at family, I look at friends, I look at colleagues, I've been surprised with some who I thought would have really flown with their own wings and found the year difficult, challenging, but would have risen through with support. So for me, and your question is one that I've asked myself several times. And I think in many ways it comes back to resilience, it comes back to your own groundedness, it comes back to your own priority of well-being, knowing yourself well enough, and Kaz used that word, being kind, knowing yourself well enough when you can start to feel yourself escalating, and then reaching out, putting up boundaries, putting up parameters so that you can get the balance. And we talk about proper selfishness, which is Charles Handy's term, that we actually need to care for ourselves so we can care for others. And for some people I know, that care for themselves disappeared so that they could actually be the carer for others. Homeschooling, for example, was a huge thing for so many families, and grandparents were on board, aunts, uncles, etc. So I think it worked brilliantly for people who had a number of mechanisms in place or who sought the support that they needed. For others, I think that they struggled and they went under the radar. And for me, that was why, your faces of just checking in and making sure that everybody was on the radar for the right reason. And then you got support as well. I think doing it on your own would create enormous difficulties. So my answer, long response to your question, I think it has depended on the individual and their life experience and their life circumstances.
Yeah.
Is that what you think, Kaz?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And one of the things that I've noticed that I think it's the extroverts that have really suffered the most. I'm an introvert, so I don't feel like I've been affected that badly by it. But I certainly see a lot of extrovert friends who are really going up the wall. I wanted to just sort of go back to another point, though, that the question that we had earlier from someone in the audience about being in stressful work environments, and I just really want to just point out that mindfulness is not the answer to everything. If we're being overworked, and we need to stand up to that. If we're feeling that could be our body's way of saying this is too much for me. So let's not get carried away and think that mindfulness is going to turn us into supermen and women. I think that's not the point either.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you did point out, of course, that some of these techniques and tips that we're talking about are not denying reality. And I think that's a really important point as well, because if it's seen as a panacea or a way of blocking out, that obviously creates problems itself. Well, thank you both for such fascinating and rich insights and also practical tips that I think we'll all take away today. I wanted just to remind you all, of course, that this is the second in a 4-part series. Our first one that's online, so we're delighted that that's happened today, reflecting the times we're living in. But also to remind you that if you are interested, there will be a download of this event on the ACAP Facebook site. So if you want to pass this on to others or would like to look at it again, please do that. Just thank you all for attending, and thank you again to our speakers, and good day.
You're welcome.
Thank you.